It's Monday evening, October 7th, and we are back for the FloTrack College Country Rankings show presented by HOKA. I'm Ryan Fenton alongside Ashley Tishins. Ashley, welcome back to another beautiful Monday. What's going on?
I mean, shoot, it's another Monday, another weekend of cross-country in the books, and here we are about to break down even more cross-country rankings. I mean, how much better could it get personally, you know?
I mean, right when we thought it was going to be maybe a lower key weekend, there were some big results out there that we'll get into in just a moment, but we can't start without first welcoming on our guest analyst, Mr. Matt Baxter out in Flagstaff, Arizona. Matt, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. Just coming off the Twin Cities 10 miler this weekend, where I finished an incredibly admirable 10th place, something which I'm not super proud of, but it's a race nonetheless. But the legs are a little bit sore today. I'm a little bit tired, but I'm ready to get stuck into this weekend.
What's the first run back after a race when you get back to 7,000 feet?
Ooh, the first run was just an easy 8 miles, time on feet. Nothing special, just assessing the body, seeing if anything hurts, and then just move on from there.
Nice. Well, congrats on the results. We're excited to have you back to talk college cross country. And the first thing up that we want to talk about is results from this past weekend. That obviously is going to play a big factor into the rankings that we revealed during the show today and that you guys will see out online. And the first things that we want to cover this weekend was really from Saturday. There were two sets of meets, Friday and Saturday. The Saturday portion of the events, we saw two of the bigger ones out there, the Paul Short Invitational and Live in Lou out there in Louisville, Kentucky. Paul Short on the men's side, we saw the Wingate men, the #1 ranked Division II team, actually score an impressive 30 points to upset the Harvard men, which was a top Division I school out there. With the caveat, they were out without their #1 Grand Blanks. So Wingate takes the win there. Utah State's Cameron Todd takes the individual win over the 8K distance. And on the women's side, the Harvard women take the win ahead of the UConn women. But individually, UConn takes that individual title with Chloe Thomas winning in 1923 over 6K. And down in Louisville, Kentucky, we saw the #14 ranked Michigan men squeak out a 2-point win over the #3 ranked Division II team, West Texas A&M University, 74-76. So a very close one. West Texas A&M had the individual champ there with William Amponsa. And when you look on the women's side, it was West Virginia women dominating with 36 points over my alma mater, Clemson, Ashley, who scored 100 points. But the big results happened on Friday, and we'll start with the Joe Piane Notre Dame Invitational down in South Bend, where we saw the #10 Notre Dame men upset the #4 NAU men by 13 points. And third, we saw the #28 ranked Cal Baptist men with the best 1-2 in the race. But really, Ashley, the big story was that upset of Notre Dame over NAU.
I mean, goodness, where can we begin? Notre Dame, they come in on their home course and they beat NAU, right? And they did it in pretty good fashion, too. If you're looking at how Notre Dame got this win, they went 8, 10, 11, 12, 14, just a 7-second spread. I mean, that is quite impressive there, quite the team effort from there. I think looking at this team, I think they're a lot stronger than maybe a lot of people thought. I think a lot of people thought Notre Dame was really strong, but coming in, being able to defeat a team like NAU where, granted, I don't think they had their best day in general, but I think overall this is a solid win going forward for the Fighting Irish.
Matt, when you're checking out these results over the weekend on Friday, obviously you're in a NAU team there with getting the upset. What did you notice from Notre Dame, from NAU, from CBU out there?
Yeah, one thing I really noticed was Texas Tech came in hot. They were easily leading through that first K split. They had 4 athletes in the top 8, but by 3K, they just didn't really have a fifth man. Their fifth man was kind of starting to fall back a little bit too much, hurting them in the points there. They did get the individual title with Ernest, which is great for that team, but the rest of the team just was kind of struggling in the back half, and so they fell back. Notre Dame, though, oh my gosh. I mean, they honestly ran a perfectly executed race. Got to give them all credit for this. I mean, they started with 120 points at 1K, and then every single split, they were just moving up just slowly taken off 10, 20 points, eventually finishing with 55, which is exactly how you want to run a race. If you know you have guys who can finish really strong, you don't want to cook them too early. So I believe that was a strategy. That was, hey, hold back. NAU often pushes from the front. They often keep a really good, strong effort. And so run a smarter race, and that's how you're going to beat them, and that's how they beat them. NAU, on the other hand, they probably just worked a little bit too hard in the middle. They made some really big jumps to get ahead of Texas Tech to get themselves into the lead. And then as you came into the last couple of K, they just didn't quite have the legs to really wind it up. And unfortunately, Santiago, who started with the team, he was a DNF on the day. And I'm hoping that he comes off this okay, and we still get to see him later in the season. And that possibly hurt the team a little bit. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame just ran a better race.
You mentioned there Santiago Prosser from NAU. So the DNF, he made it through about 6K. This is actually the second race we've seen a DNF out of him. The last one at Dave Murray out in Arizona, he made it through 5K. And we should note he was second place in that race at that split, and then dropped out after that before the finish. Anything that you take from that? It's one thing to see that DNF one time, but now back to back. Is that a strategy? Is there something going on there? How do you take that when you see that as an athlete?
I would never say that's a strategy. I think you never want to put an athlete on the line thinking that they might be in a position that they might DNF, because not only does that hurt the team, but it also, it hurts the athlete, it hurts their confidence, and you never want to start a race and not finish it. So if I'm looking at this from an outsider's perspective, and maybe I'm Mike Smith deciding what to do here, I think the smartest thing is make sure Santiago is healthy, he's in a good place. Maybe we just train him through the rest of the season. Make sure he gets in a good solid training block, and then maybe we see him closer to a regionals or nationals or something. But the last thing you want to do is put him in another race where he might be in a position that he can't finish it again. And so I think, and Mike is really smart when it comes to this, so I think we'll see some good decisions around him there.
Well, I know one of the guys that you were excited about after that home opener for NAU is David Malarkey. Finished fourth in that race, looked strong. Colin Solomon, the breakout, standout on the track in the spring, finishes 20th. So, we'll keep an eye on him, wondering if there's more there for the 1,500 meter runner specialist. But I think it's important to call this out, and just as a reminder to people, because NAU gets upset. It's going to affect where they're at in the rankings. They're trying to have this great last year for Mike Smith. And, when you look at this team and where they're at, they lose. This is the reminder of 4 of the top 5 of their finishers last year at the NCAA championships, where they were second, are no longer there. 5 of their top 7 are gone. So that is a really, really big rebuild this year that they're trying to do. So even with this result that we see, I think it bodes well for where they're at right now in terms of how they're rebuilding and where they're at in the season. So, Matt, I know you've been through some transitions, obviously, with teammates coming and going, but how significant of kind of a refresh or rebuild is this for the NAU program compared to recent years?
Yeah, it's the biggest one we've seen since the team kind of began this winning streak they started back in 2016. They've always lost, a person here and there. I think around coming off of 2020, there was a few athletes who lost after that, but this was always going to be the one. It's always going to happen eventually. If you look at the history of teams winning and having winning streaks within NCAA cross country, it always comes to a point where the team goes through a transition phase where it's so hard to keep a winning streak going. And so this year was kind of planned for. The team knew that they were going to lose a few athletes, but the good thing as well is it forces other people to step up. Because what you don't want is to just have strong leaders the entire time and everyone else just kind of becomes complacent. Oh, we'll just do what the older people on the team are doing. And what you want is sometimes to have a big change up, and then suddenly these younger athletes realize, okay, I have to step up. Now I have to be a leader. Now I have to be the face of NAU cross country going to these meets. And that's there's growing pains with that. That's a tough thing, but so my hope for this team right now is that they're just trying to figure that out. They're just trying to figure out who's the leaders, who's going to take us through to nationals, and just really lean on each other and still enjoy it. Because look, I mean, they're still in a position where they have a really good chance of being on the podium, and so you still have to enjoy that. That's still something which many teams are never in a position to do. So NAU, no matter what, still has to put their heads down, but just still have fun this season.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the first opportunity for this new kind of rebuilt squad to I'd say a medium key weekend. They had a couple low key races early on. That's why I say this one's more of a medium key. We'll see them in a few weeks in pre-natch now that they have a little testing under their belts, I'd say,
yes.
And see how they react back in Wisconsin in a few weeks. But the men's wasn't the only action out there, and for NAU, it wasn't the only action out there at Joe Piane. The number one ranked women for Northern Arizona came out and defended that number one ranking, winning by 13 points over BYU. And then in third place, it was number 19 ranked Notre Dame, which was very close third. I think it was only about 18 points separating those top three teams, Ashley. So very close one.
I mean, goodness, I think like you mentioned, it was a close race there for second and third, but I think we saw what to expect, right, from our top-ranked NAU squad. Now, granted, I think it's worth noting they did not run with Elise Stearns or Alejandra Upshaw. I mean, I think it's widely regarded that they're two of their NAU's top ladies, and they did not race. And so the fact that they come in here and still beat, almost full-strength BYU and Notre Dame squads on the day, I think that's pretty impressive. But I also want to give a shout-out to BYU as well. The women did extremely well. They even got the individual win there. They had Lexi Halliday-Lowry, who won the individual title. Jenna Hutchins was fourth for them, and then Carmen Alder was 10th. And so I think if you're looking at that, right, 1-4-10, that is a strong top three. And I think BYU has shown that, hey, they want to be in that podium conversation. And I think this is one of those first big tests for them this weekend at Joe Piane.
Matt, how did you see things shake out on that women's side?
Yeah, just with how I always look at these women's races, especially when it's early or middle of the season when they're racing 5K, I feel like positioning is just so important. The guys' races just have a little bit more time where, like exactly what we saw with the men's Notre Dame team, they could afford to sit back and then just slowly move through every K. The women can't really afford to do that because it's only 5K. It's over and done with like that. And so NAU did what you need to do. You get out hard, get into position, and then just try and hold it. And they did that. And the Notre Dame women actually did all the right things. They kind of ran somewhat similar to the men, where they got out hard, and they just kind of maintained their position and kept slowly improving as they went along. But the BYU women were just stronger. They moved through better later in the race. And so that kind of overshadowed Notre Dame's performance a little bit because they actually ran a really great race. It's just the BYU women are stronger right now.
Yeah, one call out, just a fun stat on the BYU side. Taylor Roatinsky, sophomore from BYU. I think they're number 4 runner. She finished 25th. Good ties to NCAA cross country. Her uncles are Josh and Jared Roatinsky, alumni from BYU, and Josh himself was the NCAA XC champ back in 2006. So a good pedigree there for that Roatinsky family, and excited to see Taylor out there representing that Roatinsky name. So, just calling that out, and some other elements here, which is the depth of some of these teams that we're seeing mid-season, and we'll see them as they get further into these next few weeks, and we'll run down through a little later in the show on where we'll see some of these teams next. Some of them will be matching up. Some we're going to have to wait till probably NCAA cross-country championships, but that's all part of the excitement. I will say, Joe Piane was not the only action out there. The Lakefront Invitational out in Loyola in Chicago was the other one out there. And, starting with the women, another story of upsets, Ashley, but Alabama was on the good side of this upset, not like we saw with Vanderbilt in football over the weekend, but the number 17 ranked Alabama women come in and beat the defending NCAA championship finishers from last year, the NC State women. Alabama goes 1-3-5 and just shows complete dominance there up front. What did you see out there from the Bama women?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at this, Alabama grabbing the win. I think we saw Doris Lemon-Gole. She's the top returner from NCAA cross country championships last year. She runs 18:48 for 6K, which is, I mean, that's quite impressive there to get her first win of the season in her first race. And like you mentioned too, they went 1-3-5, right? So they have a really strong top three. Now, where I'd like to see Alabama improve on the women's side especially is I think I'm looking to see where, you know, having some stronger 4, stronger 5 as well, kind of narrowing that gap a little bit from 3 back to 4 and 5. But I think that this is encouraging, right? Seeing that you do have 3 low 6 that can contribute to an effort where, shoot, you can beat someone like NC State, who's a defending champion on a given day here, like they did at Lakefront. So I think that's good for them going forward.
Matt, I'm curious what you think when you see that 1-3-5 finish for Bama. How does that bode for them come championship time?
Yeah, what we're starting to see now is you have to have low sticks if you're trying to win a national title. But what you also need is a 4th and 5th runner. That's one of the biggest things I see with this, and we'll talk about this with the men's side as well. 1-3-5 is great, but you need a 4, 5, 6, 7. You need to be able to have that depth. And I'm saying 6 and 7 as well, because generally on the day at nationals, someone has something. Someone has some kind of race that doesn't completely go the way they want. And so you need to be able to also rely on a strong 6 and 7 to be able to come through. And so that's just one of the things that Alabama women are missing a little bit at the moment. But hopefully as the season goes along, some of these women who are just putting in a lot of work and building some of that strength, by the time we get to nationals, they're gonna be in a good spot to help their team.
It was similar, a little bit similar on the men's side, Ashley. We saw, when it comes to the front runners, I should say, for Alabama, we didn't see Alabama men take the victory. We did see the Wisconsin men, number 9 ranked, going into this weekend, narrowly beating Alabama, who was ranked 25, 69-73. So only a 4-point victory, but Alabama goes 1-2-3 in that race.
I think we now see a newcomer, too, for Alabama. The winner there for Alabama was Dismas Lukira. He's a newcomer in from Kenya, and I think we're already seeing how he's making an impact here for Alabama. Grabs the individual win at the Lakefront Invitational. Now, I will say, you know, I think it's a little kind of a similar situation as it is with the Alabama women, where you have 3 strong low sticks, and then there's a little bit of a gap back there to 4, 5, 6, 7. However, I will say, not racing in this race this weekend is Hillary Chariot, which, if you factor him into this equation, he is also a low stick for Alabama. So theoretically, they have 4 really strong guys that on any given day can probably pack run together up there at the front. And so I think this Alabama men's team is actually a lot stronger than they even showed this past weekend, where they got second to Wisconsin at Lakefront.
So, Matt, similar story, I feel like, for you on this men's side. We talked about the women top 3. Ashley did just hint that Bama may have a number 4. So even though Wisconsin beats them here, do we think Alabama's actually maybe a little stronger if they have all their top 4 in there?
Yeah, I definitely think that bodes a little bit better for them if I'm comparing them to the women right now. That, yeah, we can say they have a really strong 4. And although their 4th and 5th runners within this race were a minute and just over a minute back from their top 3, their top 3 are so strong. So it's almost an unfair comparison for where those 4th and 5th guys are, because you're comparing it to like 3 of the best guys in the country right now. And so what I would be doing if I was coaching this Alabama team is I would be getting the 5, 6, and 7 runners together, and I would just be having them do everything together. It's like, you guys, we need you at nationals. We need one of you to come through and have a great day. So just have them do all the work. Have them almost be like a little team within the team, where it's like they can have that pride of like, any one of you guys are going to be the 5th runner, and you could be the thing that determines how we perform as a team. And so if I were the coach, I would really lean into that and have those guys get excited about that, because from what it seems like is those guys might have a bit of a hard time training with the top 4 because of just how strong they are. But those could be the guys who determine how Alabama does at nationals.
Yeah, Chariot actually was 98th last year. I think he ran in the 13:30s on the track. So, I would assume now that he's got these 3 guys ahead of him, if he does run in the coming weeks, we see something stronger there. But, Matt, it's a good point. Yeah, these guys training behind them will be a key part, just key cogs in that wheel, right, to try to get that Bama team. And we're going to reveal in a moment where Alabama now sits in the rankings. But that's such a huge swing when it comes to the 4 and 5 on where they could potentially finish. If those low sticks, to Matt's point, how strong those guys are, perform that way come NCAA time, which, let's remind ourselves, November, cross country in Wisconsin. Who knows what that's going to be like?
That's right. It could be snowing for all we know, so that could even throw everything off.
Matt, are you hoping for snow? I mean, I'm just thinking. I like asked that question. We see all these new names, right? There's a lot of international athletes that have come in this season. Are you someone that's wanting those adverse conditions? Are you wanting a level playing field with a normal race? Like, how are you looking right now? You know, you're a guy that's kind of fought close for an individual title. Your team has gone for a team title many times. Like, how do you factor that in with the conditions?
Man, I wouldn't wish the snow on anyone. I ran in that snow in 2018, and that really changes things. I had a really hard time with it. We were doing everything to try and make sure that we were ready for that condition. We had a whole tub of Vaseline on the start line, and guys are taking big chunks of it. We're lathering our legs in it, which feels disgusting, and it's horrible to try and wash off afterwards because it doesn't come off very well. But we were doing everything. I mean, we even had thermal underwear that we were wearing under our racing shorts. I mean, Mike was going all out for us, but it was hard. That first K, it's breathing in that cold air when you're breathing as hard as you are, that's a shock to the system. And I kid you not, that hurt my lungs. And so I don't wish the snow on anyone, but as you're saying, I mean, this is cross country. Adverse conditions is good for the sport. It's fun to watch, but as an athlete, it's tough. Just so long as the athletes prepare for that, so long as they know, hey, if it's cold, you just need to be prepared for how that's going to feel. And as a spectator, it certainly does make it fun to watch.
You said it felt disgusting. It sounds disgusting. The whole Vaseline cam at the starting line. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on there, but all this talk is about who's going to get there in November. And now that we've gone through the results, I think it's time to reveal the rankings this week on October 7th. And we'll start with the men's side, looking at 11 through 20. Ashley, there's a couple big moves here. Which ones are standing out to you? I see one with a double-digit movement there.
I mean, look at CBU there, 12th. They moved up 16 spots from being 28th, our last rankings, and I think it's well-deserved, right? They finished third at Joe Piane, had a really strong performance there, and I think if you're looking at that, right, again, like they move up ahead of teams that, you know, they beat, and then as well, just I think that this team is a lot stronger than maybe a lot of us thought, you know, heading into this season.
Yeah, those 1-2, that 1-2 finish that they had, best 1-2 at the meet over this past weekend, obviously really aiding in that big jump and how strong they perform. Call out here, Wisconsin, number 11, sitting on top of this group, but you see that -2. That means they bumped outside of the top 10. And the team I don't see on here is Alabama, who finished behind them. So I wonder what that means. I think that means we flip ahead to our 1 through 10 and see where this all shakes out. And sure enough, there you see Alabama with a huge move up into the top 10.
Now, I know we noted earlier that Wisconsin did beat Alabama at Lakefront Invitational, but if you're looking at their full squad, again, Alabama didn't run Hillary Chariot, so theoretically, if you're factoring them in here, I think that's what puts them ahead of Wisconsin here in this ranking. And then again, besides that, though, not a whole lot of movement. I think you see Notre Dame here. They move up 3 spots to number 7. You know, ran so well, won Joe Piane, so I think that's well-deserved there as well. Northern Arizona slips just 1 spot from 4 to 5. Again, they finished second, runner-up to Notre Dame at Joe Piane. And I think overall, you know, those are just the big moves from the weekend, seeing all these results play out, especially at Joe Piane and Lakefront Invitational.
Yeah, I think even with that DNF for Prozer, we're taking some assumptions that he's going to be ready to go. Like we've seen Mike Smith teams be ready to go. Matt, when you see that shakeout in the top 20, anything that stands out to you, or anything that you question or wonder as you look at those current rankings?
Yeah, I definitely feel like Notre Dame deserved to move up. When you're beating NAU, you deserve to move up. Because at the end of the day, even though, as we're talking about, NAU is going through a bit of a rebuilding phase, they're trying to figure out leadership on the team and everything, they still have one of the best coaches in the country who knows tactics, who knows how to have the team ready, knows how to race them right. And so if you can beat that team, then you're good. you're in a good spot. And because I still believe that NAU is a team that's capable of being on the podium, which now means that Notre Dame is a team that's capable of being on the podium in my eyes. And I'm super excited about pre-nats. And if I were to change something on this ranking, if I'm going opinion-based, I think BYU is the number 2 team right now. And so when we're looking at pre-nats, we're going to be looking at teams who are going to be trying to fill that 3 and 4 spot. We want to see who's going to be the podium team in the future. And so that's going to be the first time where we're really going to see some massive shakeups of these rankings. And we're going to find out who's the contenders coming into this next month.
Yeah, when we looked at 2 weeks ahead at pre-nats, I'm just looking down through the list. We have number 2 ranked Arkansas, number 4 ranked Iowa State. We've got number 5 ranked NAU. We've got Wake Forest, who has both actually pre-nats and UVA's Panorama Farms on their calendar, so we'll see where they net out. Notre Dame will be at pre-nats, so number 7 ranked. We'll have number 8 ranked New Mexico, all there. So we won't see Alabama there, so we won't see how their top 3, potentially top 4 shake up. But 6 of those top 10s will really start telling us something when we see them there at pre-nats in a few weeks.
Again, yeah, that's when we're really going to see these rankings shape up. We're going to see all these great teams now finally go head-to-head, and I think that's where we're going to see, like Matt said, are we going to see someone like Arkansas really show that they belong there? Are we going to see Iowa State move up? I think that's really when we're going to see, especially on this men's side, where I think we could see a lot of movement, just based on what we've already seen from the season in terms of some upsets and such. So I think that's really when we're going to see things shake out for sure.
I get excited when I see those big jumps.
Yes.
We had 2 of them on the men's side, and I'm wondering, what do we got on the women's side? So as we transition, we look at the women. Let's take a look at that 11 through 20 spots. And as you look through, you see a little bit of movement. I'd say on the back half, not so significant, but still actually in that top 15, really 11 to 15, we see a couple big swings.
Circle number 12 there, Notre Dame. Now, I will say, I think, going into this, they were ranked 19th on the women's side. I think that was a little bit underrating them a bit. So I think them bumping up 7 spots here to 12 after finishing 3rd at Joe Piane is really significant here. But again, besides that, not a whole lot of movement. You see Arkansas move up a couple places, but I think that's just, due to some movement within the rankings. They didn't compete this last weekend. But overall, I think looking at Notre Dame right there, the Fighting Irish, that's the big call out from 11 to 20 here on the women's side.
So I see Florida out of the top 10, gets bumped. So let's take a look at that top 10, 1 through 10. Who bumps them out? And we see the movement here. Alabama there with a big jump. That's the biggest jump we see in the top 20 on the women's side.
Yes, I think we saw they made a statement this weekend at Lakefront Invitational, beating the defending NCAA champions of NC State, so they move ahead of them there. I think we saw, some of their low sticks, Dorslam and Gola, and some other players really just show, going 1-3-5, they are a team definitely to watch going forward. And then also BYU here too, they move up from 8th to number 2, so now they're in that top 5. Again, they finished really well at Joe Piane, runner-up to Northern Arizona, and I think they really showed that, hey, they are at full strength. They had Lexi Halliday-Lowry win the individual title there for BYU, so I think them moving up to number 2 is well-deserved as well.
Yeah, we take a look at the defending champs, NC State moving back 2 spots, so we're ranked within that podium, then the top 4 now back in 6th after their 2nd place finish this last weekend. Matt, I want the Matt Baxter opinion on this. What are you seeing? Is everyone where they should be at this point, or do you have any question marks?
My biggest take from this right now is I think the algorithm is doing Notre Dame dirty. They finished just 5 points behind BYU, and BYU are now in 2nd. And they were finishing not far behind NAU, who are ranked number 1. Man, if I were putting them on this list, I think at the very least they should be getting close to the top 5 just with how they performed, because these were really strong NAU and BYU teams, and they showed that they can compete with them. So that would be my biggest one. I think Notre Dame, they moved up, which is great, and that's good progress for them. But I think by the time we start getting to conference regionals, we need to see them a lot further down this list.
Well, there's time to prove that. I think you look at that a couple of ways, Ashley. We talked about a few athletes that NAU set out. So Does Notre Dame deserve a spot closer to BYU? I think that's a debatable conversation to have. Then the other question is, should they be closer to NAU? Well, I'd say, how good is NAU if they're not or if they are sitting two of their better athletes?
I mean, that's a good point. But again, I think, yeah, like what Matt was saying, I think they have been, I think they were underrated coming into this, and great to see them move up. But does bring up a good point there. Again, they finished just a few points behind BYU, who is running, I mean, they're running Lexi Holiday, Lowry, Jenna Hutchins, Carmen Alder, like they're running pretty full strength. And so for them to finish just behind them, I think that's pretty safe to say that the Irish they're a full strength team, and a team that we're going to want to watch out for. I think creeping into the top 10, maybe like Matt said, going toward top 5 in the coming weeks.
Well, looking ahead to this weekend, just where these top 10 teams, that's a tongue twister right there, will be racing. We saw 6 of the top 10 will race on the men's side at pre-nats. On the women's side, it'll be close. We'll see 5 of the top 10 teams. So in 2 weeks, we'll see number 1 ranked Northern Arizona. We'll see number 2 ranked BYU. We'll see number 3 ranked Washington. So what we won't see on the men's side, we will see on the women's in terms of the 1, 2, and 3. So that'll be really exciting. We'll also see NC State and how they match up with the top 3 teams in the country. And we'll also see the Wisconsin women. So the one meet, I think, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the sleeper is, we'll have a couple ranked teams this weekend at the Dillinger Invite. So we'll get into that. But as we go further down on this list into the rankings, these team rankings are ultimately made up of the individuals, right? And so we're going to transition to the men's individual rankings, and look at that top 10 to see how much shakeup has been there.
Spoiler alert, there's no shakeup. It's literally the exact same top 10 that was the previous week. We still have Graham Blanks on top. Notably, he didn't run at Paul Short this weekend where Harvard was racing. We still have yet to see him debut, but again, he had a long summer competing at the Olympic Games. Parker Wolf is still up there in second. So I think if you're looking at this, it's still the same. One to know though, like of the guys that in this top 10 who did compete, that's going to be Ernest Chariot of Texas Tech. He won the Joe Piane Invitational, and I think he's one that we're going to have to keep an eye on. He ran an insane 22:20, I believe, to win that 8K there at Notre Dame.
Matt, you called out the just the strength of the Alabama men, and that they're some of the best in the country right now. They're not in the top 10, so I guess one of two things is either should they be in there, and then if they are, it's like that Alabama men's team, are they even better than what they're ranked right now at number 10?
Honestly, I think that just shows how strong the top 10 is right now. That if you can have those 3 Alabama guys running as well as they did and they're not breaking into the top 10, that just means the top 10 is really strong. And what we're looking at here as well is that we've got 3 teams where they have multiple athletes within the top 10. Texas Tech kind of showed us that they might need a little bit more strength, a little bit more depth to be able to be a real contender come nationals. But Oklahoma State and Arkansas, I mean, that's what you want. You want to be seeing multiple low sticks on a team, because that's the kind of thing that wins you a national title.
Ashley, any surprises for you on that? Just with no movement? Anyone that you were looking to see up in there?
Maybe I selfishly was hoping that we'd see someone from Alabama crack up in there, because I think they've proved that they probably belong, maybe not right in the top 10, but maybe in that conversation at least. But I think looking at this, again, like what Matt said, I think this is just great proof, right, that this top 10 is really strong, and it's maybe really hard to beat them on any given day. So I think now, however, as we go into pre-nats, Dellinger this week, there's so many big meets coming up that I think we will finally see, as these guys go head-to-head, a lot of these rankings shape up, especially on the individual side for the men.
So no real movement on the men's top 10 individuals. On the women's, are we looking at the same story? Let's take a look at 1 through 10 here and where things shape out. It looks like a lot of the top players that we've seen the last few weeks, especially in the top 6, really no movement. A couple shifts, I'd say, from 7 to 10. I think maybe one newcomer into this top 10.
Yeah, Juliet Cherubet of Texas Tech at number 10. She finished runner-up at Joe Piane, so glad to see her here in this top 10. I think she proved it this past weekend. We also see Sadie Sixstep of Villanova. She won the Nuttycombe Invite just a couple weeks ago. So now she cracks into the top 10 here. But again, like you said, not a whole lot of movement. We did see Doris Lemon-Golay of Alabama have a great season opener. So I think she's still the solid number one here. We still, though, have yet to see a couple key players open up. That's Hilda Olamomoy of Florida. You also have Chloe Scrimgore of Georgetown, Salon Ildes of Oregon, Elise Stearns of Northern Arizona as well. So I think looking at this list, while we have seen some of these individuals go ahead, open up, I think there's still plenty of other, opportunities where we're waiting to see some of these athletes compete.
Matt, anyone that you see missing from this top 10 that you would be looking for after the results last weekend?
Yes, definitely seeing two of our NAU athletes, Carrie and Maggie, getting bumped out is always tough. But it's funny as well because you have Elise who we haven't seen race yet, and she's holding her strong 6th place. But at what point do we need to see her race before these athletes who are starting to get some of that racing experience and showing that they're in a really strong spot, that maybe they might start slowly bumping her back? At some point, you do need to race, and hopefully we do get to see her out there soon. One of the things that actually stands out to me about the women's individual rankings is it's different to the men, where none of these teams are really putting multiple athletes in the top 10. It's kind of like they're relying on all these teams just kind of have one low stick, one person who they can really lean on to try and lead the team. Whereas you look at the men's and it's multiple, which means that you're often sending just one athlete on your team with the front pack, instead of having the company of someone who you've trained with the entire season to have the confidence of knowing, well, hey, if I can run with this person, then I know I can keep up here. There's a bit of an unknown when you're in a pack with people who you don't know what they're, how strong they are and how long they're going to be able to hold a pace for. So I think the men actually have the benefit of having multiple athletes to be running around, and these women right now quite don't. So that's interesting to see how that's all going to shake out.
To Matt's point about the athletes, some of the athletes retaining their rankings, having not competed yet. The way these rankings have worked is I think they give benefit to these athletes based on some of their past performances. And as we know, some athletes start later in the season. Some of the key athletes for some of these teams will open up later in the season. So I think pre-nats will start seeing that shake out. And if they haven't competed at that point, we may start seeing some of those adjustments.
I agreed. I think what Matt said earlier, at what point do you see people starting to drop, right? Like, I think at some point you have to see people compete. Elise Stearns, one of those included. So I think I'll be curious really to see when some of these key individuals actually do open up. Is it pre-nats? Is it conference, right? I think at some point we will have to see some of these individuals race, and I'm excited for when that time comes for sure.
Well, they have to race on these upcoming weekends. And speaking of that, we hinted to 2 weeks from now at pre-nats, but we do have a weekend of action coming up here on another Friday and Saturday. Not as, I would say, even more medium key than this last weekend, but still some good action out there, Ashley.
Right. I think you said it best. Not as high key as this past weekend, but still plenty of top meets to watch out for. I'll give you guys 2 meets to watch for this weekend. FSU Invite, and then the Bill Dellinger Invitational out in Eugene, Oregon. The FSU Invite will have the Florida State women. They'll also have Florida there. I don't think they're racing their top squad, but still a team to watch and see if they have some depth there. And then at the Bill Dellinger Invitational, slew of top-rated teams. You have on the men's side the number 24 ranked Oregon. You have BYU. You're going to have Montana State, Portland, Gonzaga, and those are all the teams ranked within our top 31. And then you're also going to have, I'll give this team a call out here, Salt Lake Community College. They're actually one of the top ranked junior colleges in America, so we'll be excited to see them in the mix as well. And then on the women's side there in Eugene, Oregon, it's going to be number 7 Oregon, number 9 Utah, and then BYU as well.
Yep, you mentioned Salt Lake Community College, number 2 junior college ranked. We got to give a shout out to Isaac Wood. The Wood Report, one of the deep NCAA rankings individuals out there, loves it. So good luck to them out there. That'll be a great meet for his squad. That runs down the action this week. Matt, as always, is exciting to have you on the show. I'm curious, any races for you this weekend? We kind of talked about the recovery, but what's next? Remind us.
Yeah, next for me is Pittsburgh 10 Mile on November 3rd before getting ready for a full marathon.
All right. So you're going back-to-back 10 milers, no half. What's the decision there?
Back-to-back 10 miles. Honestly, some of it is just convenience. These are just races which fit perfectly in. And to be honest, I won the Pittsburgh 10 mile last year, so why wouldn't I go back? Try and retain the crown, try and do back-to-back wins. And honestly, sometimes half marathon is just a touch too long. The 10 mile is one where it beats you up just as much as you want, but doesn't force you to go a little bit beyond where you want to go sometimes. So I love them. Love a good 10 miler.
Very good. Very good. Well, we got a couple weeks. We'll be looking out and obviously checking in with you here in 2 weeks' time when we're back. But from Ashley and myself and everyone here at FloTrack, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of the FloTrack College Cross Country Rankings Show presented by HOKA. We'll be back again in 2 weeks, October 21st, for our next rankings release. So until then, follow along all the action on FloTrack, and we will see you soon.